Hello everybody, I'm Randy Red and I want to show you something. This is the standard field ration of today, the main source of sustenance for the modern soldier when mess halls or even a stove are otherwise unavailable. Gone are the days of the salted pork and hardtack of the 18th century, as well as the canned meat and cigarettes of World War II. Food innovations of the modern era have made this bag of flexible metaplastic laminate the pinnacle of portable nutrition. It makes you wonder, what kind of food did soldiers eat in the past? At the early stages of making this video, I was originally planning on giving you a short highlight reel of what soldiers ate throughout history. Afterwards, I would show you footage of me eating an MRE and give you my impressions on the different components. I was supposed to quickly answer questions such as, what did the Roman legionnaires eat? What did the British military eat during the 19th century? What did the soldiers eat during World War II? I thought a quick ask through a search engine would yield me simple answers and then tell you the gist of it in a few minutes. But I fell through the rabbit hole because what soldiers ate in different eras are vastly different and depended on multiple factors. Therefore, instead of me reading off from a few web articles about the topic, I compiled information from research papers, academic journals, and whatever else I could find from the academic side of the internet. Now before we proceed, I just want to let you know that I'm just a dude on the internet. I don't have any educational background in history beyond what I was taught in school. However, I left my sources in the description if you want to read the topic further in detail. Now then, let's get into the meat and potatoes and delve into what soldiers ate, starting with the Romans. Ah yes, the masculine urge to think about the Roman Empire. With the extensive collection of knowledge contained in the internet, you would think that finding what Roman legionnaires ate would be easy. Because of the extensive research and archaeological efforts that have been done by experts for a long time now, I would just need to look it up and read a few web articles to get my answer. However, I was bombarded with a ton of food items. They said that the Romans ate grain, flour, bread, dried meat, smoked meat, lentils, fish, cheese, olive oil, and garum. I was scratching my head as to why there were so many until I realized that I was reading these articles through the eyes of the modern man. Standardization wasn't a thing back then, so they are not eating the same set of meals every day. Let's dive deeper into the topic, shall we? What Roman legionnaires ate actually depended on multiple factors. Firstly, how they got their food. Armies in the classical era mostly get their supplies through trading, importing, foraging, looting, and pillaging. However, Romans tend to not rely on the latter three as they are very unreliable. For example, the enemy could compete against them in terms of hunting game. The enemy could also conduct a scorched earth campaign and burn their own crops. The enemy could even poison their own food and leave them to the Romans. These methods could deprive armies of essential supplies, so instead, the Romans would depend on their logistical expertise and feed their armies using reliable methods such as trading with nearby friendly settlements, importing food from the home territories, and establishing supply lines. Secondly, they emphasize food that is preserved or has a long shelf life just in case that they are not able to get fresh food for a while. Therefore, while on the march, Roman armies ate foods like dried meat and bucellatum, which was a dense, unleavened bread that could be edible for a long time. However, if they really need to consume fresh meat, they could slaughter the animals that they brought along. Thirdly is their preference for the Roman diet. Yes, Romans ate what was locally available, but there was a demand for food that they usually ate at home. If a legion has the means, then they would definitely import foods like grain, pork, cheese, olive oil, wine, and garum. Lastly was the rank of the Roman soldier. John Pearce published a case study on Vindolanda, which was a Roman auxiliary fort just south of Hadrian's Wall. He observed that meat preferences for pig, chicken, and wild game are consistent with some evidence from archaeological deposits related to officers' accommodation. That means high-ranking officers ate better than the regular legionnaire. From all of these factors, we can conclude that the diet of a Roman soldier is rich and varied. For example, Cato the legionnaire and the rest of his contubernium was assigned to patrol the area around their fort. Therefore, they would probably bring along dried meat and buccellatum if they are not expecting to cook something along the way. At the same time, Luca the centurion would be sitting at his office trying to organize his forces, determining who would go on patrol, who would be on night watch, etc. Since he won't be outside his fort anytime soon, he is able to eat a nice bowl of pulse, which is a pottage made from farro grains boiled in water. Because of his rank, he can also add flavor to his pulse by adding honey and then complementing it with a slab of roasted pork and a pitcher of wine. Now, food preservation has been a very important aspect for our survival, especially during war times. For most of our history, the main methods were salting, drying, smoking, fermenting, and pickling. Yes, all of these methods made food last longer, but they also have one thing in common. They changed the taste of the food that they were preserving. Well, that was the case until the early 19th century when the method of canning was invented. You see, the French government during the First Republic put out a reward to anyone who could develop a way to preserve food for the army during long marches. A confectioner by the name of Nicolas Appert discovered through trial and error that food would last longer when they are heated beyond the boiling point of water. Although he was rewarded with 12,000 francs in 1810, the food preserved in the early stages of appertization were packaged in glass jars, which is not ideal for the French military due to its fragility. Imagine if they actually implemented this. Pierre could be driving his horse cart to the front lines and then he suddenly hits a pothole. The sound of hundreds of glass jars breaking would be deafening, knowing Napoleon's finest would be eating ice soup and flavored with their own boots until another caravan makes a successful delivery. So as a solution, English merchant Peter Durand patented the use of tin-plated iron canisters. When he sold the patent to engineer Brian Duncan, canned food was able to be sold for the British Army and Royal Navy. Although metal cans did solve the durability problem, they were very difficult to open. Soldiers had to exert great effort to open these cans using tools like knives and chisels. It took about 50 years until someone was able to invent a can opener, mainly because the cans at that time were thinner than before. Now, compared to the tin cans during Nicolas Appert's time, there were significant improvements to canned food during the Industrial Revolution. The most obvious one would be that most of the canning process would be automated, thus producing more with little manpower. Another one would be the improvement of sterilization. Boiling the food may not be enough to kill the most hardy germs, so Andrew Shriver patented the steam retort in 1874. It controls the flow of steam and the pressure inside through valves and gauges, which would increase the temperature inside the can and kill many potentially dangerous bacteria. Fast forward a few decades into the two world wars and armies are being supplied on an industrial scale, meaning everything a soldier needed was mostly made in a factory. Vehicles, guns, ammunition, equipment, and yes, even food. Any military power at the time that had industrial capability was able to issue soldiers military rations. For example, the Germans had the Iron Ration, which had canned meat, powdered soup, hardtack, and fake coffee. The Australians had the O2 Operation Ration, which had components such as carrot biscuits, cans of meat and vegetable stew, and caramel bars. The K Ration of the Americans also had components such as canned meat, milk powder, and biscuits. They also came complete with supplementary field items such as cutlery, toilet paper, and cigarettes.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
After World War II, a number of significant innovations were made in terms of food technology. These included retort packaging, freeze drying, and the flameless ration heater. Now, retort packaging technology involves the use of multiple layers of heat-resistant, flexible packaging materials laminated together. This replaced cans as it was lighter and more compact and flexible, thus reducing bulk and load carriage. One thing to note is that weight is such a vital aspect for a soldier that this report by the Marine Corps Combat Development Command stated that overloading causes fatigue, heat stress, injury, and performance degradation. That is why the report prescribed that a soldier should carry a maximum of 30% of their weight. Therefore, if the food that they bring is lighter, it can leave more weight to vital equipment such as extra ammunition or an additional grenade.
Okay, let's go.
Freeze drying involves cooking the meal, quickly freezing the meal, and then placing the food in a high vacuum chamber. This would result in a minimal physical change in the food, better retention of nutrients, and inhibits microbial and mold growth. Aside from having a longer shelf life, the removal of moisture also makes the food lighter. Today, cooking your food on the battlefield is a thing of the past, as making a fire produces smoke and could potentially reveal your position to the enemy.
Enemy!
It is the reason why the flameless ration heater was developed. It is basically a bag that had a pouch of iron shavings and magnesium that would react to water in order to make itself hot enough to eat your food.
Ooh, nice is.
Now that I have covered an overview of military rations throughout history, here is me eating a US meal ready-to-eat ration. The first thing that I would have to note is that I did not understand the labels printed in the packaging, so I don't know when this particular ration was produced. Safe to say that it could be produced in the 2010s, since US rations around this period had this brown packaging. First thing that I would comment on is the size. It is bigger than what I was expecting. Measured at 12 inches in height and 7.5 inches in width, it's basically as big as a family-sized bag of chips. I was also surprised that it only weighed about 750 grams. It is pretty light given that there is a full course meal inside this bag, together with supplementary items like a spoon, a pouch of tissues, and a pack of matches. Now let's break down the components of this ration. Here we have the main entree. The label said that it is chicken and noodles in sauce. Here we also have the cardboard sleeve, which we would be using to keep the main entree and the FRH stuck together so that it hits properly. It also contained the nutritional facts of the ration. Here we have the raspberry sauce. This would probably serve us as the dessert of the ration. Here we have our accessory pack, which contained all of our supplementary items. Here we have a bag of Skittles, which would serve us as a form of snacks. Here we have our beverage base. The label said that it is the tropical punch flavor. This would probably how soldiers would get their electrolytes. Here we have a packet of peanut butter. Here we have some crackers. The hardness of the thing made me want to flick my nail against it, so I was expecting it to be almost as sturdy as the regular crackers that you would buy at the store. Here we also have a packet of apple jelly. I guess you can pair it with the peanut butter and make a PB&J using the crackers. Here we have only one spoon. It was pretty sturdy. It really didn't bend much unless I put some force into it. And this would serve as our hot sauce. I found it really cute that they packaged this in a small glass bottle instead of the condiment packets fast food places usually give out on takeout orders. Here we have the flameless ration heater, or the FRH. This is by far the most interesting component of the MRE, mainly because I can't fully wrap my hand around the science behind it. You mean to tell me that if I put water in this bag, it becomes hot enough to make my food warm? Wow, that's some military magic right there. The best I could understand is that magnesium is very reactive to water, and the reaction makes the water very hot very fast. On the FRH, they give you instructions on how to use it. I found it very interesting that it said in the instruction to put it against a rock or something. Here we have the beverage bag. At first, I thought it would be for the beverage base, but the label said it's supposed to be for the coffee. Based on the labels that I have been reading so far, you could actually put this in the FRH together with the main entree to make a warm cup of coffee together with your warm food. So what's in the accessory pack? Inside we can find tissues, creamer, salt, moist towelette, matches, freeze-dried coffee, sugar, and mint gum. Now here is me consuming every component of the ration, starting with the beverage base. When I poured cold water into the beverage base, I noticed that it did not dissolve properly. It also made my hands sticky. Maybe I was supposed to use lukewarm water instead? Yeah. When I was recording this, I thought I would need a bit of time for the beverage base to dissolve into the water, so I focused on the other components of the ration first, before drinking some. The next thing that I did was to heat up my coffee and my main. I tried tearing open the packaging for the coffee. The label said to tear it across the line, but it didn't actually open up. In a fit of frustration, I just grabbed my pair of scissors to cut it open. Following the instructions and recommendations in the beverage bag, I poured in the freeze-dried coffee and filled it with 6 ounces of water. Not repeating my mistake with the beverage base, I put in lukewarm water this time. Since it had a Ziploc seal, I was slightly confident that I could lay it down on my table and not spill. Opening the FRH and trying to fit both the main and the coffee was a bit of a challenge, since it was a tight fit. You can see me here trying to struggle with the packaging that took me a good few minutes to fit everything in the bag. Realizing that both the main and the coffee did not fit the FRH, I made the beverage bag burp out some air. With a little bit of effort, I was able to stuff everything down in the bag. Now I can finally witness magic. Pouring in some water, I waited for it to react to the heating element. Not noticing any changes, I tried shaking the water to activate the heating element. When I was satisfied, I put it through the cardboard sleeve. I didn't think it took this much effort just to squeeze everything in. Now, following the instructions to the letter, I found a rock outside my house and put it against the FRH. While we let the FRH heat up the main and the coffee, this gave me the opportunity to try out the other components. Since the whole struggle of stuffing the heating element, the main and the coffee in the bag left the table wet, I was able to use the tissues that were included in the accessory pack. I have to say, they were very absorbent. The next thing I ate were the crackers, the peanut butter, and the apple jelly. Based on touching the packaging, I had the impression that these crackers were hard and tough, maybe even tougher than the crackers sold in grocery stores. I was surprised at how crumbly they were. Just placing it on the tray made me spread crumbs all over the table. At least opening the package is easy this time. I tried spreading the peanut butter on the cracker, but it was too thick and sticky. Oh well. Before taking a bite, you see me tap some of the crumbs away to avoid making a mess. Little did I know it was not going to be much of help since I blew out crumbs as soon as I sunk my teeth into the crackers. Enough talk about how crumbly the crackers were. Let me talk about how it tasted. The cracker itself did not taste much, but one thing to note is that it was very thirst-provoking. The crackers were soaking up my saliva like a sponge. Pairing it with how thick the peanut butter was, I couldn't resist grabbing a cup of water off screen. The next thing I did was try the apple jelly into the cracker. There was nothing that significant to say about it. It tasted like an apple in jelly form. It didn't blow my mind, but at least it wasn't terrible. Now here is my sad attempt at making a PB&J. It was a bit frustrating to assemble, but it was palatable when it entered my mouth. Adding the apple jelly made the whole thing less thirst-provoking. Eating the entire thing like a sandwich would be out of the question now, so I thought that rushing down the cracker and mixing it with the peanut butter and jelly would be an excellent idea. However, when I tried mixing it, the peanut butter just stuck to the spoon. Somehow I made it work. At least I don't blow out crumbs whenever I take a spoonful. Now here's me trying out the beverage base. I don't know if it was because I poured in cold water, but it tasted like raspberry cough syrup. It's very chemically. Now here is me eating a bag of Skittles. I think it was a novel idea to put in Skittles in a ration, but there is not much to comment on the taste. It's tangy and sweet, just like what you could buy at the store. Now here's me trying the raspberry applesauce. One thing that I could comment on the applesauce is that it tasted mellow at first, as in you mostly taste the apple and then it would hit you with the tang of the raspberry. However, the more you eat, the more you taste the raspberry. Not even like the natural flavors of the raspberries, more like the chemical, artificial flavoring of the raspberry. This was the only food component in the MRE that I did not finish because the raspberry flavor became too overwhelming halfway through eating it. Now after eating the raspberry sauce, trying the beverage base, and making my sad attempt of making the PB&J, it was time for me to try out the main and the coffee. After giving it a few minutes, I was expecting the bag to be hot. I have seen videos of people using the FRH and most of them have steam coming out of the bag. Maybe it is because of its age, but at least I was able to make the food and coffee warm. So the first thing that I did was to taste the coffee. I didn't have any more transparent cups, so I am using a peanut butter jar instead. One thing to note that the coffee was really good. It wasn't too bitter. In fact, the bitterness made it delicious. It is one of the best instant coffee that I have ever drank, and I wish this would be available in the civilian market. I thought it would taste better if I added creamer and sugar, but it made it worse. The bitterness was gone and it tasted like I was drinking a cup of warm water. Now here is me tasting the main. The main reminded me of chicken alaking. It was creamy, it was mellow, it was also hearty. If I could recreate the recipe at home, I would like to eat this again on a cold, rainy night. Totally heartwarming. The chicken is a bit dry, but that didn't matter because they were swimming in the sauce. However, not learning my lesson with the coffee, I thought adding salt and Tabasco sauce would make it better. No, it did not. I was struggling with opening the bottle of Tabasco. Even after opening it, I had trouble getting the sauce out of the bottle. I should have taken this moment as a warning as the main was already good before putting the salt and hot sauce in. The salt made me feel like I'm putting my tongue through sandpaper, and the hot sauce added unnecessary heat and acidity in the main. If I ever come across this exact ration again, I'll skip on putting the extra stuff and just eat it as it is. So here's me trying out the rest of the accessory packet. I ate the gum, which was very minty, and the taste reminded me of blue Mentos. The moist towelette was really moist, but because of its age, it tore very easily. The last thing that I tested out was the matches. It did not work, and also the sticks were very brittle. I wanted to save the Skittles for later, so I put them in the beverage bag. Not to worry, since I washed them in the sink with water before putting it in. Since the bag is ziplocked, the color of the Skittles would erode in the bag, but that doesn't matter as it would still taste the same. And that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoy me rambling about military food for a good few minutes. Maybe you even learned something interesting. If you are as passionate about this particular topic as me, comment down below some interesting food history facts that you know on top of your head. I would like to give a special shout out to my friend Pao, who was the one that gave me the MRE. Without him, this video would not be possible. If you want to support me and my ramblings, you can give this video a like and you can subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching this video all through the end. This has been Randy Red. Okay, bye.